right. Matt joined ESPN in February and contributes across several shows, including Get Up, NFL Live, and he joins us on the program. All right, Matt. So we're not supposed to read too much into these pro days, but everybody's reading into these pro days. You want to start with Mac Jones and his disappointing pro day, or Justin Fields with his unbelievable pro day?
Yeah, Dan, I've been doing this long enough to know that these things really don't matter. They just give us something to talk about in the month of March. It's like there's a little bit of tournament is starting to die down. Let's talk about pro days. Let's get excited about guys throwing in shorts or running 40s when that doesn't really matter, like you said. So I don't know that I want to put too much into Mac Jones overthrowing a couple passes and Bill Belichick shaking his head or Kyle Shanahan looking bored, as opposed to Justin Fields and who was there, who wasn't there. I would hope that in a time where we should be better at evaluating quarterbacks than we've ever been before, we would go back to who was actually good from Labor Day to New Year's Day. And to me, that was Justin Fields. And he's done it for 2 years, never losing a game in the Big Ten. Zach Wilson is impressive. I was at the Pro Day Friday. He is impressive. Probably the most fun quarterback prospect to watch this year, but he did it in the Mountain West in a weak schedule. And if you go back to 2019, 11 touchdowns to 9 interceptions when he actually had to play someone from the Pac-12, which is like the 5th best football conference. So I'm not all in on the pro days mattering that much. Hopefully it just reminds people who these players actually are.
What are your quarterback rankings right now?
Yeah, well, Trevor Lawrence is 1. I'm not dumb enough to argue against that. I have Justin Fields number 2, which is funny because these two have been competing for that top spot since they were sophomores in high school. Then I would say that Zach Wilson and Trey Lance are very comparable in terms of there's a lot of wow factor there, but there's a lot of boom or bust potential because we haven't seen them do this against decent competition even, and it's small sample sizes with Trey Lance. Then I have Mac Jones 5th. I know he's the belle of the ball right now, and we got the Tom Brady comparisons out there. That's wild to me that we're going to do that for a guy who's played 17 games at Alabama. He's never not thrown to a first rounder at wide receiver. He's got an all-world offensive line in front of him, a first-round running back, and an offensive coordinator good enough to get the Texas head coaching job. So it's just hard to look at that and not feel a little Mitch Trubisky-ish 1 year, and we're blown away by the football IQ and the upside, and we forget to actually watch what these guys can do at the position.
Okay, do you think the Niners moved up to get Mac Jones?
Absolutely, I do. Which, as a lifelong Niners fan, that's such a punch to the stomach. And I'm trying to trust John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. But I remember when they said they didn't need a quarterback, and they passed on Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson only to pick up C.J. Beathard in the 3rd round. It's like I'm still a little gun shy about trusting this front office, and this just feels like something they would do. They would overthink it again, just like trading back to get Solomon Thomas or drafting Reuben Foster in the 1st round. It feels like this front office is a little too cute sometimes.
But, Matt, did the Niners have to do this to get Mac Jones?
They didn't have to go to 3, Dan. I don't think they did. Now, maybe to 7, maybe to 6, which we saw that pick get traded already. But I don't think you needed to go from 12 to 3 to get Mac Jones. I don't think the Atlanta Falcons with Arthur Smith is going to look at Mac Jones and be like, coming from Ryan Tannehill, that's the quarterback I want. I feel like the Falcons would be all in on Justin Fields, who's a local kid, Trey Lance, who has great athleticism, throws a beautiful deep ball, if they even go quarterback. The Bengals aren't drafting a quarterback at 5. The Eagles weren't going to at 6. So the Niners had other options. So my hope and prayer, as someone who's still a little bit of a 49ers fan, is that is a move for Justin Fields. And I would say that even as an unbiased evaluator. Kyle Shanahan, I understand, loves Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins. Look at who's beat you. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson. What do they all have in common? And it's mobility. Not that Mac Jones is a statue back there, but you want plus level mobility. Justin Fields ran a 4.4 at 230 pounds and has a great arm. I don't understand why they would overthink this.
But sometimes we see too much of, one of these draft prospects, Matt. And Deshaun Watson, the player, we saw too much of him, and it felt like we love the guy that we don't see, like Daniel Jones, Mitchell Trubisky. We love the mystery here instead of what's right in front of us.
Without a doubt, I call it prospect fatigue. I can remember an NFL general manager telling me Nick Bosa's not that good. I was like, "You're insane, man! Like, you're just looking at the fact that we've seen him play for 3 years. Nick Bosa is one of the best pass rushing prospects ever." But we get to this point of the cycle where we're all a little bored. We all want that tweet that's going to get a lot of clicks. We all want to, hit the scroll on the bottom of the screen with our takes. instead of, I wish there was this moment where we could just catch our breaths and say, okay, where were we December 31st on these guys? And unless something happened in terms of injury or off field, or they show up to their pro day and just they're 20 pounds overweight and can't run, let's go back to where we were December 31st, who was actually good at playing football. But you're right. We want the Kyler Murray, who, the 1-year guy. We want Mitchell Trubisky instead of Deshaun Watson beat Alabama single-handedly. Patrick Mahomes on a very bad Texas Tech team made them competitive in the Big 12. Those are the things and why I look at Justin Fields of, we've seen you do it for 3 years. And even this year, he threw 6 picks. Some of that was, his offensive line wasn't very good. Some of it was on him. Go back last year, he didn't throw a pick, I don't believe, until the end of the season. So it's not that he's this turnover-laden quarterback. He was a very conservative passer. It does feel like the collective draft media this year has decided Justin Fields is the guy they're going to be down on.
He's Matt Miller, ESPN NFL draft contributor. What happens now leading up to the draft that may change what happens with the draft order?
I think the biggest thing would be, like you mentioned, Deshaun Watson is off the table right now. That there's not going to be a trade there. I think the Sam Darnold being moved could affect the draft order, but it feels like we're locked in, which I know the bosses don't like, right? Because there's no drama and intrigue. Trevor Lawrence is going to go first. Zach Wilson's going to go second. It feels like Mac Jones goes third, and then you're on the clock at 4. So you're an hour into the draft before you're even like, oh, I wonder what the Falcons will do. And so unless Atlanta trades out of that spot, there might be a little intrigue there. But, Sam Darnold being traded could provide some clarity. It feels like the Russell Wilson stuff, unless he comes back on your show and talks again and gets himself back on the trade market. It feels like those types of things have died down where we're really starting to settle into knowing what teams want. Even, the rumors that Joe Burrow is really advocating for Jamar Chase, his former teammate. Their pro day is today at LSU. Even that, you're starting to say, okay, like picks 1 through 5, you would feel pretty good about your mock draft right now.
The best player in this draft, or best players, give me 3, regardless of position.
Yeah, it's Trevor Lawrence. He is the best player in this draft. And I love that we've just stopped talking about him because it's accepted. He's going to go first. He's great. Let's move on. I think Jamar Chase is second. Again, the LSU Pro Days today. We haven't seen him play football in a year, which I think some people looked at the 170-pound Devontae Smith and started saying that he was somehow better than Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is 40 pounds heavier. He's going to run faster in the 40, and he had 20 touchdowns as a sophomore with Joe Burrow. Third, I would go Kyle Pitts. And I don't even want to put a position on Kyle Pitts. He's an offensive weapon. He's a pass catcher at Florida. Their pro day is today as well. I think he's going to run in the mid 4.4 range at 6'5", 245 pounds. He was unstoppable last year at Florida. He and Kyle Trask had a beautiful connection, and the ability to high point in the red zone to win over the top reminds me of Mike Evans. So I'm not even comparing this guy to a tight end. He's just someone who in the red zone could be a huge difference maker.
If I had last year's quarterbacks in with this year's quarterbacks, who would be the number 1 overall pick?
It would be closer than I think a lot of people realize. But I do think it would be Trevor Lawrence just because the 3 years that we've seen, taking over the job from Kelly Bryant as a freshman, we've seen it sustained for a while. With Joe Burrow, there was even people last year like maybe Tua is the best quarterback. Maybe Justin Herbert is, because with Joe, it was the 1-year wonder, that Joe Brady gets there, everything becomes perfect, and he has the best quarterback season I've ever seen in college football. But I do think Lawrence would be 1, Burrow would be 2. I think there the conversation gets interesting. The injury to Tua would probably put Zach Wilson ahead of him, might even put Justin Fields ahead of him. And then we would probably see Tua and Justin Herbert, who was overthought, a lot like I think Justin Fields is being overthought. But it's crazy. The league feels like it's changed in the last just year, where mobility is so much more valued now than it was even in March of 2020.
Yeah, but drop-back quarterbacks have been winning Super Bowls.
Well, that's just Tom Brady, right? Right? I mean, so like Tom Brady's been winning Super Bowls. Otherwise it's Mahomes, it's Rodgers, it's Wilson. So, you almost have to take Brady out of the equation.
Mobility is it's kind of in the eye of the beholder, because I like mobility. I don't need to have somebody who is. I need you sliding in the pocket. I need you getting outside the pocket. Mahomes isn't a fast guy. I mean,
right.
His 40s
you want
like
mobility, not a runner.
Yes.
Like being able to move to throw, not move to run. I'm with you on that. And I do think that to some degree that might hurt Justin Fields and Trey Lance, is that they were asked to run a decent amount, and especially Justin Fields was at Georgia as a true freshman. Jake Fromm was the quarterback, and he would come in and run QB power. And so I think that is affecting their stock a little bit, where Zach Wilson moves to throw. Mac Jones moves to throw, even though I think 100 dropbacks was all he was pressured in his 17 starts. So there's not a big sample size of that, but it's not his fault that Alabama has first rounders at every position on the offensive line.
Have you ever loved a quarterback and he didn't pan out? When's the last time that happened?
Yeah, that happens all the time in this job. I loved Teddy Bridgewater. Watching Teddy at Louisville was like, this is it. He's accurate, he's smart,
Tough,
and just let him work off reads on guys.
That's not a bad one though, Matt, because I loved him too. But without that injury, I really I liked the character of Teddy Bridgewater too.
Same.
And he didn't have a good pro day, but I just said, put on the tape when he played Miami, he gets hit right in the mouth.
Exactly.
That's what I want to know with these quarterbacks. What do you do when there's adversity?
No, that's a huge part. That's huge. That's one of my big keys into my scouting reports is adversity. And it's like Justin Fields gets rocked by Clemson.
Yeah.
I would still be laying on the field crying if that happened. Zach Wilson, even, there's some adversity there. He had 2 injuries in college. They told him before the year, this is an open job. This job might not be yours next year.
Yeah.
So I think you can look at those things, and you want some adversity. But then again, like Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck, 2 of the greatest quarterback prospects ever, arguably no adversity. So you have to almost look for it sometimes. Trevor Lawrence has been the number 1 pick probably since he picked up a football as a sophomore in high school. And, there's some credit to that too, that you've been in that spotlight since you were 16 years old, and you've been a great leader. You've been a great captain on your team. He's already engaged. He's super mature. So there's something to be said for that too.
Hypothetical. If Peyton Manning coming out of college, Andrew Luck coming out of college, and Trevor Lawrence coming out of college, and you got the first pick, I'm going to give you what you already know about Luck and Peyton and the unknown with Trevor Lawrence. Who would Matt Miller, ESPN NFL draft contributor, take number 1 overall?
Oh, I'm taking Peyton Manning. You can't go against Peyton, even in today's game. He's just too smart, carves up the field, and the accuracy at all levels. And I think Peyton was sneaky athletic early in his career, deceptively fast. I think that's what we have to call it. But he could move around a little bit. It wasn't quite as bad as it was in the Denver days.
Okay, so I thought you might go Trevor Lawrence. Recency bias.
I'm not trying to get this clipped out in 5 years and people be like, this idiot actually thought Trevor Lawrence is better than Peyton Manning. I'm not doing that.
Well done, Matt. Well done. Hey, congrats on the job, and we'll be watching. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dan. Thank you.
That's Matt Miller, ESPN NFL draft contributor.